A quiet road in Willow Creek, Pennsylvania. Rain falling soft. A 1967 Mustang broken down. And a single dad, James Harper, stopping to help a stranger. But the next morning, his bank account has an extra $500,000. Who's the mysterious woman behind it? Why'd she do it? Before we start the story, please give me a like. Thank you. The rain taps steady on the tin roof of Harper's garage, nestled in the heart of Willow Creek, a small town where time seems to linger. Dusk settles, casting a soft glow over the fields. And inside, James Harper leans over an old pickup truck, his muscular frame tense. At 6 feet tall, with tanned skin from years under the sun, his tired face carries deep lines, etched by worry. His intense eyes lock on the engine, hands tightening a wrench with practiced ease. He wipes sweat from his brow, leaving a smudge of grease, his breath heavy in the humid air. This garage is James's second home, where he pours his heart to provide for his 10-year-old son, Liam. At 38, James has buried his big dreams. Once, he wanted to design cars, to build machines that turned heads, but life had other plans. 4 years ago, his wife, Anna, passed suddenly from a heart condition, leaving him shattered. Debts piled up, dreams faded, and James became a mechanic, living in a modest trailer, fighting to give Liam a decent life. Liam, grab me the flashlight. James calls, his deep voice warm, eyes flicking to the door. Liam, a lanky boy, 5'2", with medium brown skin, bounds in, his curious face lit with excitement. His bright eyes shine as he clutches a flashlight, hurrying to his dad. Here, Dad, he says, voice clear, handing it over, his gaze fixed on James's hands. Liam loves the garage, loves watching his dad work, like it's some kind of magic. James smiles, taking the flashlight, his hand ruffling Liam's hair. Thanks, buddy, he says, his eyes soft. He shines the light into the engine, checking wires, his hands moving deftly. But inside, his heart's heavy. Yesterday, their landlord, Mrs. Larson, called about the trailer rent, 3 weeks overdue. James, I know it's tough, but I need the money, she said, her voice kind but firm. James promised to pay, but his wallet holds just a few bucks, enough for milk and bread for Liam. He glances at Liam, who's fiddling with a bolt, his eyes sparkling. James tightens the wrench, his chest aching. Liam's his world. He can't let his son grow up in worry, can't let him lose faith in a better future. But how? Liam's school fees, electric bills, and even his small dream, a camera to photograph birds, feel out of reach. James sighs, his eyes darkening, his hands slowing on the engine. James, we got a situation. Tom Reed, his best friend and coworker, shouts from the garage door. Tom, a stocky man with a weathered face, steps in, holding a phone, his eyes curious. Someone's car broke down on the highway. A classic Mustang. Sounds sweet. You up for it? He asks, his hand pointing to the road. James frowns, his tired face hesitant. Roadside fixes are often a hassle, with grumpy drivers. But he needs the cash. All right, he says, standing, wiping his hands, his eyes resolute. Liam, stay with Uncle Tom. I'll be back soon. Liam nods, his bright eyes gleaming, his hands still clutching the bolt. Be careful, Dad, he says, watching James with trust. James pats Liam's head, his eyes warm, then grabs his toolbox, heading to his beat-up truck. The rain falls harder. Tires rolling on wet asphalt. The engine's hum blending with the quiet night. He drives toward the highway, his heart heavy, but a flicker of hope stirs. Maybe it's just a small job, but who knows? It might change something. The highway stretches through Willow Creek, flanked by golden wheat fields under the rain. James slows, his sharp eyes spotting a 1967 Mustang, its midnight blue paint gleaming. Parked on the shoulder, the hood's up, steam rising, and beside it stands a woman, petite, 5'6", with fair skin. Her anxious face is tight, but her sharp eyes study the engine, her hands on her hips, like she's trying to solve it herself. James parks behind, stepping out, his toolbox clanking. He approaches, his eyes focused, his tired face polite. "Need some help?" he asks, his voice steady, setting the toolbox down. The woman turns, her sharp eyes scanning him, as if sizing him up. She nods, her hand brushing rain from her forehead, her anxious face easing slightly. "I'm guessing you're a mechanic," she says, her voice light but firm, her eyes meeting his. "Something like that," James replies, kneeling by the engine, his eyes scanning quickly. "What's the trouble?" She sighs, her arms crossing, her eyes following his hands. "It started sputtering a few miles back, then died. Barely made it to the shoulder." James nods, his eyes narrowing, his hand tracing the fuel line. The Mustang's engine is pristine, well kept, not the ride of a casual traveler. He checks the battery, the wires, then spots the issue, a loose fuel line. "Easy fix," he says, his eyes reassuring, his hand grabbing a wrench. "You're lucky it didn't strand you further out." "Lucky's debatable," she mutters, her sharp eyes flickering with something sad, her hand tucking wet hair behind her ear. James works quietly, his hands tightening the line, checking the fuel pump. There's something about her, something guarded, restless. She's not just a rich tourist. Her eyes carry a story, like she's running from something. "You from around here?" he asks, his eyes glancing up, his hands still moving. She hesitates, her eyes drifting, her hand touching a leather wallet on the passenger seat. "Not exactly," she says, her voice soft. "Just passing through." James nods, his eyes back on the engine. "That's a shame," he says, his hand tightening the wrench. "Not many folks drive a beauty like this around here. Be nice to see it more." Her lips curve slightly, her eyes brightening for the first time, her anxious face softening. "You a Mustang fan?" she asks, her head tilting, her eyes curious. James grins, his eyes sparkling, his hand wiping grease on a rag. "Hell yeah. A 67 Fastback. That's not just a car. It's history." She looks at him, her eyes like they want to ask more, but she just nods, her arms crossing again. "What about you?" she asks, her sharp eyes sharpening. "What's your story?" James stands, wiping his hands, his eyes darkening. Just a guy fixing cars, raising his kid. Nothing as exciting as driving a Mustang through nowhere. She studies him, her eyes seeing something deeper, her hand gripping her wallet tighter. "I'm Emily," she says, extending her hand, her eyes direct. "Emily Watson." James shakes it, feeling her firm grip, his eyes meeting hers. "James Harper," he says, his hand releasing, his eyes back on the car. "Try starting it now." Emily slides into the driver's seat, her hand turning the key, and the Mustang roars to life. She exhales, her eyes bright, her anxious face gone. "Thank you," she says, stepping out, her hand flipping open her wallet, pulling out cash. "How much do I owe you?" James looks at the car, then at her, his eyes calm. Something in her gaze expects him to take the money, like everyone does. He shakes his head, his hand tucking the rag away. "No charge. 10 minutes work. Not worth billing." Emily frowns, her eyes surprised, her hand pausing on the wallet. "But you," she starts, her voice faltering. James smiles, his eyes gentle. "Call it my good deed for the day," he says, lifting his toolbox, his eyes lingering on her. Emily stares, her eyes disbelieving, her hand slowly closing the wallet. "Thank you, James," she says, her voice soft, her eyes shining. She climbs into the Mustang, her hand revving the engine, the roar echoing. James stands, his eyes watching the car vanish into the rain, a strange feeling settling in his chest. Something about Emily Watson tells him she's more than a passerby. He heads to his truck, his eyes thoughtful, unaware this moment will change everything. Back at the garage, night has fallen, the rain heavier. James steps in, his eyes weary, his hands setting the toolbox down. Liam runs up, his bright eyes gleaming, his curious face eager. "Did you fix the car, Dad?" he asks, his hands clutching a bolt, his eyes fixed on James with pride. James smiles, his eyes soft, kneeling to Liam's level. "All done, buddy," he says, his hand ruffling Liam's hair, his eyes warm. "A real nice Mustang." Liam beams, his eyes wide, his hands spinning the bolt. "I want to see it," he says, his voice excited. James nods, his eyes tinged with sadness, his hand patting Liam's shoulder. "Someday, I'll show you one," he promises, his heart heavy. Tom steps in, his eyes curious, his hand holding a water bottle. "How'd it go?" "They tip you big," he asks, his eyes glancing at James. James shakes his head, his eyes darkening, his hand wiping residual grease. "Didn't charge her," he says, his voice low. Tom raises an eyebrow, his eyes surprised, his arms crossing. "You crazy? Rent's overdue." "Man," James sighs, his eyes staring at the rain, his tired face strained. "She needed help." "Tom," he says, his hand clenching the rag, his eyes distant. "Not everything's about money." Tom shakes his head, his eyes sympathetic, his hand patting James's shoulder. "You're too good, Harper. But goodness doesn't pay for Liam's school." Tom's words sting, hitting James's deepest fears. He looks at Liam, who's stacking bolts in a neat row, his eyes bright. James clenches his fist, his heart aching. He can't fail. He remembers Anna, her gentle smile, her warm voice. "Be kind, James," she'd said, her hand in his, her eyes full of love. Kindness comes back. But now, kindness feels like it's draining him dry. James drives Liam home to their trailer, a tiny home in a field's edge. Rain drums the roof, a single lamp casting a yellow glow. Liam sits, doing homework, his eyes focused, his hands scribbling fast. James cooks dinner, pasta with cheap sauce, his eyes watching his son, his heart heavy. He opens bills on the table, his eyes darkening. Electric, rent, Liam's school fees, all piling up. "Liam, bedtime," he calls, his voice soft, his eyes gentle. Liam nods, his eyes yawning, his hand hugging his notebook. Night. Dad, he says, his eyes bright, scampering to his room. James sits, his eyes on the bills, his hand rubbing his forehead. He thinks of Liam's dream, a camera for bird photos. I want to capture the sky. Dad, Liam had said, his eyes dreamy. James clenches his fist. He has to make it happen. Late at night, James checks his bank account on his phone. His eyes tense. Just $73 left. He sighs, his eyes darkening, his hand shutting off the screen. Anna, what do I do? He whispers, his eyes on her photo. An old picture, her smile radiant. Was his kindness to Emily right? Or just another mistake? The next morning, Willow Creek wakes in a misty dawn. James rises early, his eyes weary, his hand brewing coffee. Liam sleeps, his eyes peaceful in dreams. James sits at the table, his eyes on the fields, his heart heavy. He opens his phone, checking his account out of habit, his eyes distracted. Then, he freezes. The balance reads, $5,073. James blinks, his eyes wide, his hand trembling. He checks again, his heart pounding. No mistake, $500,000. Out of nowhere, he opens the bank message, his eyes frantic, his hand scrolling. A short note. Thank you for your kindness. A. Pop. A. B. James mutters, his eyes stunned, his hand gripping the phone. Emily Watson, the woman with the Mustang. She did this. Why? James stands, his eyes reeling, his hand pacing the floor. $500,000. Enough to clear debts, fund Liam's college, change their lives. But why? Who is she? Really? James looks at the rain, his eyes thoughtful, his tired face now lit with hope. Something bigger is at play. Emily's no ordinary traveler. She carries a secret, and James's kindness touched it. He clenches his fist, his eyes resolute. He has to find her, to understand. The rain has softened to a drizzle in Willow Creek, the morning air thick with mist. James Harper sits at his trailer's small table, his muscular frame tense, tanned skin catching the dim light of a single lamp. His tired face is etched with worry, his intense eyes locked on his phone, hands trembling slightly. The screen glows. 5,073s. $500,000. Deposited overnight. With a cryptic message. Thank you for your kindness. E. Gatto. James's heart pounds, his fingers gripping the phone, his mind racing. Emily Watson, the woman with the Mustang. She did this. But why? He leans back, his eyes darting to the window, where fields stretch under gray clouds. Yesterday, he was just a mechanic, scraping by, fixing cars to keep his son, Liam, fed. Now, this money enough to clear debts, pay for Liam's school, maybe even buy that camera Liam dreams of for bird photos feels like a dream, or a trap. James clenches his fist, his eyes narrowing, his hand rubbing his jaw. Kindness doesn't pay like this. Not in his world. He glances at Liam's room, where his son sleeps, medium brown skin peaceful in the dawn, his lanky frame curled under a blanket. Liam's curious face, always so bright, flashes in James's mind, those sparkling eyes full of trust. James's chest tightens, Liam's his everything. He can't mess this up. He opens his phone again, his eyes scanning the message, his hand scrolling for clues. E. Has to be Emily. But who is she? Really? No tourist drops $500,000 for a 10-minute fix. James stands, his eyes resolute, his hands grabbing a coffee mug. He needs answers. He opens his laptop, an old clunker that hums loudly, and types Emily Watson into the search bar, his fingers tapping fast, his eyes focused. Results flood in. An artist in Ohio, a teacher in Maine, nothing that fits. He adds Mustang and Pennsylvania, his hand clicking the mouse, his eyes scanning. A news article catches his attention. Buried on page 3, Watson, Innovations CEO, keeps low profile at classic car rally. His eyes widen, his hand pausing. Watson Innovations, a billion-dollar tech company in Pittsburgh, working on renewable energy. The article mentions an E. Watson, who loves vintage cars, especially Mustangs. James leans closer, his eyes intense, his hand scrolling. The photo's blurry, but it's her petite, fair skin, sharp eyes, standing by a 1967 Mustang. Emily Watson, CEO. His breath catches, his hand gripping the table, his tired face stunned. A billionaire. He helped a billionaire fix her car, and she paid him $500,000. His eyes dart to the bank app, his hand trembling again. It's real. But why him? Why this? He paces the trailer, his eyes restless, his hands running through his hair. The money could change everything, pay off Mrs. Larson's rent, cover Liam's school fees, give his son a future. But it feels wrong. Like charity. Like a debt he didn't ask for. James stops, his eyes darkening, his fist clenching. He's not a beggar. He helped Emily because it was right, not for a payout. He needs to find her, to understand. The trailer door creaks, and Liam steps out, his bright eyes blinking sleepily, his curious face lighting up at James. Morning, Dad, he says, his hands rubbing his eyes, his lanky frame shuffling to the table. James forces a smile, his eyes softening, his hand reaching to ruffle Liam's hair. Hey, buddy, he says, his voice warm. Sleep, okay? Liam nods, his eyes sparkling, his hands grabbing a cereal box. You look weird, Dad, he says, his face curious, his eyes studying James. James chuckles, his eyes gentle, his hand pouring coffee. Just thinking. Kid, he says, his gaze drifting to the phone. Liam tilts his head, his eyes bright, his hands scooping cereal. About the Mustang lady, he asks, his voice teasing. James's eyes widen, his hand pausing, his tired face amused. You're too smart. You know that, he says, his eyes meeting Liam's, his hand tapping the table. Liam grins, his eyes gleaming, his hands stirring his bowl. She seemed nice, he says, his face thoughtful. James nods, his eyes distant, his hand gripping his mug. Nice, sure, but a billionaire. He can't tell Liam. Not yet. He needs to know more. He grabs his phone, his eyes scanning for a contact number for Watson Innovations, his fingers typing fast. The company's website is sleek, all glass and green energy promises, but no direct line to Emily. James frowns, his eyes narrowing, his hand clicking through pages. Then, a general inquiry form. He hesitates, his eyes tense, his hand hovering over the keyboard. He types a message, his fingers deliberate, his eyes focused. This is James Harper from Willow Creek. I helped Emily Watson with her Mustang. I need to speak with her about a recent transaction. Please pass this along. He hits send, his eyes uncertain, his hand setting the phone down. What now? He leans back, his eyes staring at the ceiling, his tired face heavy. The rain taps outside, a steady rhythm, like the questions in his head. An hour later, Liam's at the table, his bright eyes focused on a bird guidebook, his hands flipping pages. James watches, his eyes warm, his heart aching. Liam deserves more than this trailer. More than a dad who's always broke. He's about to speak when his phone buzzes, his eyes snapping to the screen, his hand grabbing it fast. An unknown number. He answers, his eyes tense, his voice cautious. James Harper, he says, his hand gripping the phone. Mr. Harper, this is Mark Ellison from Watson Innovations. A smooth, professional voice replies. James's eyes widened, his hand tightening, his tired face alert. Miss, Watson received your message. She'd like to meet you in Pittsburgh tomorrow to discuss the matter. Can you make it? James's breath catches, his eyes darting to Liam, who's still reading, his curious face unawares. Pittsburgh, a 3-hour drive, a billionaire's world. I can be there, James says, his eyes resolute, his hand steadying. What time? Ellison's voice is calm, his words precise. 10 or 6 outside. At our headquarters. We'll send the address. Travel expenses covered if needed. James shakes his head, his eyes firm, his hand tapping the table. I'll drive myself, he says, his voice steady. Great, Ellison replies. Missa. Watson looks forward to it. The call ends, James's eyes staring at the phone, his hand still gripping it. He looks at Liam, his eyes softening, his tired face conflicted. Buddy, I gotta go to Pittsburgh tomorrow, he says, his voice gentle. Liam's bright eyes lift, his curious face excited. For the Mustang lady, he asks, his hands closing the book. James chuckles, his eyes warm, his hand rubbing his neck. Something like that, he says, his gaze distant. Liam grins, his eyes sparkling, his hands clapping. Cool. Can I come? James shakes his head, his eyes gentle, his hand patting Liam's shoulder. Not this time. Kid, you'll stay with Uncle Tom. Liam pouts, his eyes dimming, his hands fidgeting. James kneels, his eyes meeting Liam's, his hand squeezing his son's arm. I'll be back by dinner. Promise, he says, his voice firm. Liam nods, his bright eyes trusting, his curious face softening. James stands, his eyes resolute, his heart racing. Pittsburgh. Emily answers. The next morning, the rain has cleared. Willow Creek bathed in soft sunlight. James drives his old truck, his eyes focused, his hands steady on the wheel. The highway hums, fields giving way to Pittsburgh's skyline, all steel and glass, a world apart from his garage. His tired face is tense, his intense eyes scanning signs, his hands gripping tighter as the city nears. Watson Innovations headquarters looms, a sleek tower of green-tinted glass, pulsing with wealth. James parks, his eyes wide, his hand rubbing his jaw. He doesn't belong here. He steps out, his eyes scanning the building, his muscular frame stiff. The lobby's all marble and light, a receptionist's calm face greeting him, her steady eyes professional. Mr. Harper, for Misso. Watson, she asks, her hands typing. James nods, his eyes tense, his hand clenching his keys. "That's me," he says, his voice low. She smiles, her eyes kind, her hand gesturing. "Elevator to the 30th floor. Mr. Ellison will meet you." James rides the elevator, his eyes on the rising numbers, his hands in his pockets. The doors open to a pristine hallway, glass walls revealing bustling offices. Mark Ellison waits, a lean man with a calm face, steady eyes, his hand extended. "Mr. Harper." "Welcome," he says, his voice smooth. James shakes his hand, his eyes cautious, his tired face guarded. "Thanks for having me," he says, his hand releasing. Ellison leads him to a conference room, all glass and chrome, city lights pulsing below. James sits, his eyes scanning the room, his hands resting on the table. "Miss Watson will be here shortly," Ellison says, his eyes steady, his hands folding a notebook. James nods, his eyes tense, his tired face tight. He's out of his depth, a small-town mechanic in a billionaire's world. His hand taps the table, his eyes drifting to the skyline, his heart pounding. The door opens, and Emily Watson steps in, her fair skin catching the light, her petite frame poised. Her anxious face is softer now, her sharp eyes meeting James's, a faint smile on her lips. She carries a tablet, her hands flipping it open, her eyes focused. "James," she says, her voice warm, her hand gesturing to a seat. "Good to see you again." James stands, his eyes intense, his tired face serious. "Emily," he says, his voice steady, his hand gesturing to the chair. "I need answers." She nods, her eyes understanding, her hand setting the tablet down. "I figured," she says, her voice calm, her eyes locking on his. Ellison clears his throat, his calm face neutral, his hands adjusting his glasses. "I'll give you some space," he says, his eyes glancing at Emily, his hand grabbing his notebook. He leaves, the door clicking shut, leaving James and Emily alone, their eyes meeting across the table. James leans forward, his eyes intense, his hands clenching. $500,000. "Emily," he says, his voice low, his tired face hard. "Why?" "I fixed your car." 10 minutes. "That's not worth $500,000, that's outside." Emily's sharp eyes soften, her anxious face thoughtful, her hands folding on the table. "It wasn't about the car," she says, her voice quiet, her eyes steady. "It was about you." James frowns, his eyes narrowing, his hand rubbing his neck. "Me?" he asks, his voice skeptical, his tired face confused. Emily nods, her eyes distant, her hand tracing the tablet's edge. "I've met a lot of people, James," she says, her voice soft. "Most see me and see money. Power. You saw a person who needed help. You didn't ask for anything. That's rare." James shakes his head, his eyes darkening, his fist clenching. "I don't take handouts," he says, his voice sharp, his tired face tense. "I helped you because it was right, not for pity." Emily's eyes flash, her anxious face firm, her hands pressing the table. "It's not pity," she says, her voice strong. "It's an investment. In you." James blinks, his eyes wide, his hand pausing. "Investment?" he asks, his voice uncertain, his tired face searching. Emily leans forward, her sharp eyes intense, her hands gesturing. "Watson Innovations is working on a new electric vehicle project," she says, her voice clear. "We need someone with real mechanical expertise. Someone who understands machines, not just code." "I saw your work. You're that person." James stares, his eyes reeling, his hand gripping the chair. A job. With a billion-dollar company. His tired face is stunned, his intense eyes locked on Emily. "You're offering me a job?" he asks, his voice low, his hand rubbing his jaw. Emily nods, her eyes steady, her hand sliding a folder across the table. "Technical consultant," she says, her voice firm. "You'd help us refine the vehicle's systems. Bring a hands-on perspective. It's good pay. Benefits. A future for you and your son." James's eyes dart to the folder, his hand hesitating, his tired face conflicted. Liam flashes in his mind. Those bright eyes, that curious face, dreaming of a camera, a better life. His heart races, his eyes tense, his hand hovering over the folder. "Why me?" he asks, his voice quiet, his eyes searching. "You could hire anyone. Engineers, experts. I'm just a garage mechanic." Emily's sharp eyes soften, her anxious face vulnerable, her hands folding again. "Because you're not just a mechanic," she says, her voice gentle. "You're someone who cares, who fights for what matters. I need that on my team." James's eyes flicker, his tired face softening, his hand touching the folder. Her words hit deep, stirring something he hasn't felt in years. Hope. He opens the folder, his eyes scanning the offer, his hands flipping pages. 6 figures. Health insurance. Relocation support if needed. His eyes widen, his hand pausing, his tired face overwhelmed. This could change everything. But it's a leap. From Willow Creek's dusty roads to Pittsburgh's gleaming towers. His eyes darken, his hand closing the folder, his heart torn. "I need to think about it," he says, his eyes meeting Emily's, his voice steady. Emily nods, her eyes understanding, her hand resting on the tablet. "Take the day," she says, her voice calm. "But don't wait too long. Opportunities like this don't come often." James nods, his eyes tense, his hand tucking the folder under his arm. He stands, his eyes lingering on her, his tired face thoughtful. There's something about Emily, something beyond the money. The job, a connection he can't name. As he turns to leave, the door opens, and a man steps in, light skin, stern face, cold eyes. He's polished, his hands adjusting a watch, his gaze sweeping the room. Emily's sharp eyes harden, her anxious face tightening, her hands clenching the tablet. "Richard," she says, her voice cool, her eyes locked on him. James pauses, his eyes narrowing, his tired face alert. The man, Richard Klein, smirks, his cold eyes flicking to James, his hand gesturing dismissively. "So, this is the new charity case," Klein says, his voice smooth, his eyes mocking. James's intense eyes flare, his fist clenching, his tired face hard. "Watch it," he says, his voice low, his eyes locked on Klein. Emily stands, her sharp eyes blazing, her hands slamming the tablet down. "Enough. Richard," she says, her voice sharp. "He's here on merit." Klein chuckles, his cold eyes unmoved, his hand waving. "We'll see," he says, his voice dripping with doubt, his eyes dismissing James. James's eyes burn, his muscular frame tense, his hands gripping the folder. He wants to fire back, but Emily's sharp eyes catch his, her anxious face pleading restraint. He nods, his eyes steady, his tired face resolute. He walks out, his eyes on the hallway, his heart pounding. Klein's words sting, but they fuel him. He's not here for pity. He's here for Liam. Back in the elevator, James's eyes stare at the city below, his hands clutching the folder, his tired face heavy. Pittsburgh's a different world. All speed and power, nothing like Willow Creek's quiet fields. He feels small, out of place, but Liam's face, those bright eyes, that curious smile grounds him. His eyes hardens, his hand tightening on the folder. He can do this. He drives home, his eyes on the road, his hands steady. Willow Creek welcomes him with familiar streets, the garage's tin roof glinting in the dusk. He steps inside, his eyes weary, his hands setting the folder down. Liam runs up, his bright eyes gleaming, his curious face eager. "How was Pittsburgh, Dad?" he asks, his hands clutching a pencil, his eyes wide. James smiles, his eyes soft, his hand ruffling Liam's hair. "Big," he says, his voice warm, his tired face amused. Lots of glass and noise. Liam grins, his eyes sparkling, his hands tapping the pencil. "Did you see the Mustang lady?" he asks, his face teasing. James chuckles, his eyes gentle, his hand patting Liam's shoulder. "Yeah, I did," he says, his gaze distant. Tom steps in, his weathered face curious, his hands wiping grease. "Well, spill it," he says, his eyes on James, his hand leaning on the workbench. James sighs, his eyes darkening, his hand opening the folder. "She's a billionaire, Tom," he says, his voice low, his tired face serious. "Runs a tech company. Wants me to work for her." Tom's eyes widen, his weathered face stunned, his hands crossing. "Work for her? Like suits and offices?" he asks, his voice shocked. James nods, his eyes tense, his hand flipping the folder shut. "Something like that," he says, his tired face conflicted. Tom whistles, his eyes impressed, his hand rubbing his chin. "Damn, man, $500,000 in a job. You hit the jackpot." James shakes his head, his eyes darkening, his fist clenching. "It's not that simple," he says, his voice low. "There's a guy, Klein, already stirring trouble, calling me a charity case." Tom frowns, his weathered face hard, his hands on his hips. "Screw him," he says, his eyes firm. "You're no charity case. You're the best mechanic I know." James's eyes soften, his tired face grateful, his hand tapping the workbench. Thanks, Tom," he says, his voice quiet. But Klein's words linger, sharp as a blade, cutting at his pride. That night, James sits at the trailer's table, his eyes on the folder, his hands still. Liam's asleep, his bright eyes closed, his curious face peaceful. James opens the folder again, his eyes scanning the offer, his tired face heavy. The money, the job, it's a chance to give Liam stability, a future. But it's a world he doesn't know, full of people like Klein, waiting for him to fail. His eyes darken, his hand rubbing his forehead. Can he do this? He thinks of Anna, his wife, her gentle smile, her warm voice. "Take the leap, James," she'd said once, her hand in his, her eyes full of faith. "You're stronger than you know." James's eyes drift to her photo, his hand touching the frame, his tired face softening. He thinks of Emily, her sharp eyes, her quiet strength. She saw something in him, something worth investing in. His eyes harden, his hand closing the folder. He's not backing down. He grabs his phone, his eyes resolute, his fingers typing a message to Ellison. I'm in. When do I start? He hits send, his eyes steady, his tired face set. The reply comes fast. Monday, 8:10 a.m. Welcome to Watson Innovations. James exhales, his eyes on the trailer's ceiling, his hands resting on the table. It's done. He's stepping into a new world. For Liam. For himself. The Pittsburgh skyline glows under a cool morning sun. Glass towers catching the light like mirrors. James Harper stands in the lab of Watson Innovations, his muscular frame tense, tanned skin contrasting the sterile white walls. His tired face is set, intense eyes scanning a blueprint on a touchscreen table, hands sketching notes with a stylus. It's his first week as a technical consultant, and the weight of this new world presses hard. Computers hum, screens flicker with data, and the air buzzes with urgency. James grips the stylus, eyes focused, hands steady despite the knot in his stomach. He's a long way from his Willow Creek garage. Around him, engineers move fast, their hands tapping keyboards, eyes glued to monitors. Sarah Nguyen, a lead engineer with medium brown skin, stands nearby, her focused face tight, keen eyes flicking to James. She adjusts a 3D model on her screen, hands precise, but her gaze carries doubt. James feels it, his eyes catching hers, tired face stiffening. Sarah's been cold since day one, her keen eyes questioning his every move. He's no tech genius, no Ivy League grad, just a mechanic who fixed a CEO's car. His hand tightens on the stylus, eyes narrowing. He's got to prove himself. Mark Ellison, the project manager, steps in, his lean frame calm, steady eyes scanning the room. Team, we're behind on the EV battery system, he says, hands gesturing to a prototype on a workbench. Client demos in 2 weeks. James, any thoughts? Ellison's eyes meet James's. Calm face, encouraging. James nods, eyes intense, hands setting the stylus down. He walks to the prototype, a sleek battery pack, his hands tracing its casing, tired face focused. Mind if I take a look? He asks, eyes on Ellison, voice steady. Sarah's keen eyes narrow, focused, face skeptical, hands crossing. It's not a carburetor. Harper, she says, voice sharp, eyes challenging. A few engineers glance up, their eyes curious, hands pausing. James's intense eyes flash, tired face hardening, hands still on the battery. I know, he says, voice low, eyes locked on Sarah, but machines talk. Same language, different accent. She scoffs, eyes rolling, hands returning to her screen. But James ignores her, eyes focused, hands opening the casing. He studies the wiring, his eyes sharp, hands probing connectors. This isn't a pickup truck, but it's still a puzzle, one he's solved 1,000 times. His tired face relaxes, intense eyes alive, hands moving with confidence. The lab fades. The doubts fade. It's just him and the machine. He spots a loose thermal sensor, his eyes narrowing, hands adjusting it. This could be overheating, he says, voice calm, eyes on Ellison, mind running a diagnostic. Ellison nods, steady eyes approving, hands signaling an engineer. Sarah's keen eyes flicker, focused face curious now, hands pausing on her keyboard. The diagnostic runs, screens lighting up, And the data confirms James's hunch: thermal spikes. Ellison's calm face breaks into a smile. Steady eyes on James. Good catch, he says, hands clapping. Let's recalibrate. Sarah's eyes widen. Focused, face softening. Hands typing fast. James's tired face stays neutral. Intense eyes meeting hers. But inside, his heart lifts. Maybe he belongs here. Back in Willow Creek, Liam sits in the garage. Medium brown skin, catching the afternoon light. Lanky frame hunched over a bird guidebook. His curious face is bright. Eyes sparkling as he flips pages. Hands tracing a photo of a hawk. Tom Reed. Stocky with a weathered face. Wipes grease nearby. Eyes glancing at Liam. Hands on a wrench. Still chasing birds. Kid, Tom asks. Voice warm. Eyes amused. Liam grins. Bright eyes gleaming. Hands tapping the book. Gonna photograph one someday, he says. Curious face, dreamy. Tom chuckles. Weathered face, kind. Hands setting the wrench down. Your dad's in the big leagues now, he says. Eyes on Liam. Pittsburgh suits and all. Liam's bright eyes dim. Curious face, thoughtful. Hands closing the book. I miss him, he says. Voice soft. Eyes on the floor. Tom's weathered face softens. Hands patting Liam's shoulder. He'll be back tonight, he says. Voice gentle. Liam nods. Bright eyes lifting. Curious face trusting. Dad always comes back. In Pittsburgh, James sits in a small office, his eyes on a laptop, hands typing a report. The day's been long. The lab's pressure heavy, but Sarah's nod at the end felt like a win. His tired face eases, intense eyes focused, hands moving steady. A knock at the door breaks his focus, his eyes lifting, tired face alert. Emily Watson steps in, fair skin glowing under fluorescent lights, petite frame poised. Her anxious face is calm today, sharp eyes warm, hands holding a coffee mug. Settling in, she asks, voice soft, eyes meeting James's, hands setting the mug down. James leans back, eyes intense, tired face offering a small smile. Trying, he says, voice low, hands closing the laptop. It's a lot. Emily nods, sharp eyes understanding, anxious face thoughtful, hands folding on the desk. You're doing better than you think, she says, voice encouraging, eyes steady. James's eyes soften, tired face grateful, hands resting on the chair. Her faith keeps him grounded. They talk, eyes locked, hands gesturing lightly. Emily shares a story, her sharp eyes distant, anxious face vulnerable. I wasn't always here, she says, voice quiet, hands tracing the mug. Grew up in a small town, like Willow Creek. Dad was a mechanic. Like you. James's eyes widen. Tired face, curious. Hands leaning forward. He taught me cars, she says. Sharp eyes wistful. But I lost him young. Built this company to honor him. Her anxious face tightens. Hands clenching. There's more. But she stops. James nods. Eyes gentle. Tired face understanding. I get it, he says. Voice soft. Hands tapping the desk. Lost my wife, Anna. Few years back. Everything I do's for Liam. To make her proud. Emily's sharp eyes soften. Anxious face empathetic. Hands loosening. Liam's lucky to have you, she says. Voice warm. Eyes meeting his. James's eyes flicker. Tired face touched. Hands still. Something stirs. A warmth neither names. Their moment breaks as James's phone buzzes, eyes snapping to the screen, hands grabbing it. A news alert. Watson Innovations new hire. Charity case or con. His intense eyes darken, tired face tensing, hands scrolling fast. The article, from a local business blog, calls him a small-town nobody, hints at a shady past, and questions Emily's judgment. Richard Klein's name is quoted, his concerns about James's qualifications. James's fist clenches, eyes burning, tired face hard, Klenho. Emily's sharp eyes narrow, anxious face angry, hands snatching her tablet. She reads, eyes blazing, hands gripping the device. He's crossing a line, she says, voice sharp, anxious face set. James's eyes meet hers, intense and steady, tired face resolute. What's his deal? He asks, voice low, hands on the desk. Emily sighs, sharp eyes darkening, anxious face, heavy, hands setting the tablet down. Richard Klein, she says, voice bitter. My ex-husband. He's got influence, money, and a grudge. Hates that I'm running this company. James's eyes widen, tired face stunned, hands clenching. Ex-husband. His mind races, eyes tense, tired face searching. He's coming after me to get to you, he says, voice grim, hands rubbing his jaw. Emily nods, sharp eyes hard, anxious face determined. He's done worse, she says, voice low, hands folding, but we'll handle it. You're here because you belong. James. Her eyes lock on his, sharp and fierce. Anxious face unwavering. James exhales. Eyes steady. Tired face resolute. She's fighting for him. But the article stings. Its words digging at a wound. Years ago, James was accused of stealing tools from a shop. A false claim by a jealous coworker. He was cleared. But the rumor stuck, following him like a shadow. His eyes darken, hands clenching. If Klein finds that, it'll get worse. He thinks of Liam, those bright eyes, that curious face, trusting him. His eyes harden, tired face set, he won't let Klein win. The next day, the lab's tense, whispers trailing James, eyes glancing, hands pausing. Sarah's keen eyes are colder, focused, face guarded, hands typing fast. The articles spread, its poison seeping in. James ignores it, eyes intense, tired face focused, hands tweaking the battery prototype. He's found another issue, a design flaw in the cooling system. Risking overload. His eyes narrow, hands sketching a fix. Tired face alive with purpose. This is his language, his fight. He calls Sarah over, eyes steady, hands pointing to the blueprint. Look at this, he says, voice calm, tired face serious. The coolant flows off. It's choking the system. Sarah's keen eyes study the sketch, focused, face skeptical, hands crossing. You sure? She asks, voice sharp, eyes challenging. James nods, eyes intense, hands adjusting the model. Run a simulation, he says, voice firm, tired face unwavering. She hesitates, keen eyes flickering, hands moving to the computer. The simulation runs, screens flashing, data confirming James's fix. The system stabilizes. Efficiency up 10%. Sarah's keen eyes widen. Focused face impressed. Hands pausing. Damn, she says. Voice soft. Eyes meeting James's. You're good. James's tired face breaks into a small smile. Intense eyes, warm. Hands setting the stylus down. "Just doing my job," he says. Voice low. Sarah nods. Keen eyes respectful. Focused, face softening. He's earned her trust. Ellison enters. Steady eyes bright. Calm face pleased. Hands clapping. "That's a game changer." "Harper," he says. Eyes on James. Hands gesturing to the team. "Client's gonna love this." The lab buzzes. Engineer's eyes warmer. Hands resuming work. James's tired face glows. Intense eyes alive. He's proving himself. But the article lingers. Klein's shadow looming. His eyes darken. Hands clenching. This isn't over. That evening, James drives to Willow Creek. Eyes on the road. Hands steady. The garage's familiar hum welcomes him. Tom's weathered face grinning. Hands wiping grease. "Heard you're a big shot now," Tom says. Eyes amused. Hands tossing a rag. James chuckles. Eyes gentle. Tired face relaxed. Hands catching the rag. "Hardly," he says. Voice warm. Liam runs up. Bright eyes gleaming. Curious face, eager. Hands clutching a sketch pad. "Dad, you're back," Liam says. Eyes sparkling. Hands hugging James. James kneels. Eyes soft. Tired face warm. Hands squeezing Liam's shoulders. "Told you I'd be here," he says. Voice gentle. Eyes meeting Liam's. Liam's curious face beams. Bright eyes wide. Hands showing a drawing, a hawk soaring. "For when I get my cameras," he says. Voice dreamy. James's eyes flicker. Tired face aching. He's doing this for Liam. Tom pulls James aside. Weathered face, serious. Hands on his hips. "Saw that article," he says. Eyes concerned. Hands gesturing. "Some jerk's got it out for you." James's eyes darken. Tired face tense. Hands clenching. "Klein," he says. Voice low. Emily's ex. He's playing dirty. Tom's weathered face hardens. Eyes firm. Hands patting James's arm. "You're better than him," he says. Voice steady. James nods. Eyes resolute. Tired face set. He has to be. Back at the trailer. James tucks Liam in. Bright eyes, sleepy. Curious face, peaceful. Hands clutching a stuffed hawk. Night. "Dad," Liam says. Voice soft. Eyes closing. James's eyes soften. Tired face warm. Hands brushing Liam's hair. Night. "Buddy," he says. Voice gentle. Eyes lingering. Liam's his reason. He sits at the table. Eyes on the article. Hands gripping his phone. Klein's words burn. Charity case. Shady past. His eyes harden. Tired face resolute. He'll fight. In Pittsburgh. Emily sits in her office. Sharp eyes on her tablet. Anxious, face tense. Hands typing fast. She's seen the article. Klein's latest jab. Her eyes blaze. Hands slamming the tablet down. Anxious, face fierce. She thinks of James. His intense eyes. His tired face, fighting for his place. Her sharp eyes soften. Hands loosening. He's worth fighting for. She grabs her phone. Eyes determined. Hands dialing her PR team. Klein won't have the last word. James lies awake. Eyes on the trailer's ceiling. Hands behind his head. Tired face heavy. The lab's victory feels good. Sarah's respect a win. But Klein's attack cuts deep. He thinks of Anna. Her gentle voice. "You're enough, James." His eyes flicker. Tired face softening. Hands clenching. He'll prove it. He thinks of Emily, her sharp eyes, her quiet strength. His heart stirs, eyes steady. There's something there, something real. Pittsburgh's towers shimmer under a warm June dawn, their glass facades dancing with light. James Harper stands in Watson Innovations' lab, hands tweaking a 3D model of an electric vehicle battery system. Eyes locked on a digital blueprint. The air hums with urgency. Screens flashing data. Engineers bustling. His fingers adjust a circuit. Hands steady despite the pressure knotting his chest. The client demos days away, and this system's the key to a massive international contract. Sarah Nguyen works beside him, hands typing fast. Syncing James's tweaks to the model, she flashes a grin, fingers pausing briefly. "You're on fire today, Harper," she says, voice light, eyes glancing his way. James's gaze softens, hands pausing, a small smile breaking through. "Just keeping up," he says, voice low, fingers resuming work. Sarah nods, hands steady, eyes returning to her screen. They're a team now, a far cry from her early doubts. Mark Ellison strides in, hands gesturing to a prototype on a workbench. "We're close. Team," he says, voice firm, eyes sweeping the lab. "This battery's our edge." James. "Status." James wipes his brow, eyes on Ellison, hands setting the stylus down. "Found a power surge risk," he says, voice steady, fingers pointing to the blueprint. "Redesign the regulator. Should stabilize output." Ellison's gaze brightens, hands clapping. "Run it," he says, eyes fixed on James. James nods, hands launching a simulation, eyes on the screens. Data streams, the regulator holding firm. Sarah's grin widens, hands tapping the desk. "Nailed it," she says, voice excited, eyes meeting James's. Ellison beams, hands gesturing to the team. "That's our ticket," he says, voice strong. "Client's gonna eat this up." The lab buzzes, engineers' hands resuming work, eyes warmer. James's chest lifts, gaze alive. He's making a difference. But the victory's shadowed. His phone vibrates, hands grabbing it fast, eyes snapping to the screen. A text from an unknown number. "Your past won't stay buried. Harper, keep Liam close." His gaze darkens, fist clenching, heart racing. Liam. His son's smile, those curious sketches of birds, flash in his mind. His hands tremble, eyes wide. "Klein, it has to be. The article was bad, but this is personal." His jaw tightens, hands gripping the phone. No one threatens his son. He steps outside the lab, hands dialing Tom Reed in Willow Creek, eyes scanning the hallway. Tom appears on the video call, hands wiping grease in the garage. "What's wrong?" "Man," Tom asks, voice tense, hands pausing. James's gaze is fierce, fist clenching. "Got a threatening text," he says, voice low. "About Liam." "You with him?" Tom's eyes widen, hands gesturing. "He's at school. Safe," he says, voice firm. "I'll pick him up." "You okay?" James nods, gaze steady, hands loosening. "Keep him close." "Tom," he says, voice grim. "Someone's playing dirty." Tom's gaze hardens, hands nodding. "Got it," he says, voice strong. James hangs up, eyes on the Pittsburgh skyline, hands pocketing the phone. Klein's digging, unearthing that old theft accusation, a lie that nearly broke him. His fist clenches, gaze burning. He won't let it touch Liam. Back in the lab, James buries his fear, hands tweaking the prototype, eyes on the blueprint. Sarah notices, hands pausing, gaze curious. "You good?" "Harper?" she asks, voice gentle, eyes searching. James forces a nod, hands steady, eyes avoiding hers, just focused. He says, voice low. She nods, hands resuming work, gaze doubtful. He's not fooling her, but he can't stop now. At noon, James heads to Emily's office, hands clutching his phone, gaze tense. Emily's behind her desk, hands flipping a report, eyes scanning pages. She looks up, gaze softening, hands setting the report down. "James," she says, voice gentle, eyes meeting his. "Heard about the regulator. You're killing it." James's gaze eases, hands resting on a chair. "Thanks," he says, voice soft, eyes flickering, but that's not why he's here. He shows her the text, hands sliding the phone across the desk, gaze grim. Emily's eyes narrow, hands grabbing the phone, gaze blazing as she reads. "Klein," she says, voice sharp, hands gripping the device. This is his style. James nods, fist clenching, gaze resolute. "He's after Liam," he says, voice low. "Digging up my past. An old theft charge. Wasn't even true." Emily's gaze widens, hands setting the phone down. "I'm so sorry," she says, voice soft, eyes locked on his. Klein's desperate. He's losing ground, lashing out. James's gaze darkens, hands rubbing his jaw. "Liam's my world," he says, voice breaking, eyes distant. "I can't lose him." Emily's gaze firms, hands reaching across the desk, stopping short. "You won't," she says, voice strong, eyes fierce. "We'll stop him." They sit, eyes locked, hands still. Emily shares more, eyes distant, hands tracing the desk. "Klein wasn't always like this," she says, voice quiet. "We married young, built this company together, but he changed, got greedy, cruel. I left him, took control. He's never forgiven me." Her hands clench, gaze tightening, the pains still raw. James's gaze softens, hands leaning forward. "I know loss," he says, voice gentle. "Anna, my wife, kept me grounded. Losing her, it's a hole you don't fill." Emily's eyes meet his, hands loosening. "You're still fighting," she says, voice warm, gaze steady. "For Liam, for yourself." James's gaze warms, hands tapping the desk. Her words hit deep. Something shifts, a closeness neither names. Eyes lingering, hearts stirring. Emily's hands fold, gaze resolute. "We'll trace that text," she says, voice strong. "My team's good. Klein's not untouchable." James nods, gaze steady, hands pocketing his phone. "Thanks, Emily," he says, voice low, eyes meeting hers. She smiles, gaze soft, hands gesturing. "We're in this together," she says, voice firm. James's gaze glows. He's not alone, but Liam's safety gnaws, fist clenching, eyes darkening. He needs to see his son. That afternoon, James drives to Willow Creek, hands gripping the wheel, eyes on the road. The familiar fields soothe him, gaze easing. At the garage, Tom greets him, hands tossing a wrench. Liam's inside, Tom says, eyes concerned. Hands pausing. School was fine, but he's asking for you. James's gaze softens. Hands patting Tom's shoulder. Thanks. Man, he says, voice warm. Liam sits at a table, hands drawing a sparrow on a sketch pad, eyes sparkling. James kneels, hands squeezing Liam's shoulder, gaze gentle. Hey, buddy, he says, voice soft. Eyes meeting Liam's. Liam's grin widens, hands showing the sketch. For my camera, he says, voice excited. James's gaze flickers, heart aching. He'll keep Liam safe, no matter what. He pulls Liam close, hands hugging tight, gaze fierce. You're okay, right? He asks, voice low, eyes searching. Liam nods, hands clutching the pad, eyes confused. Yeah, Dad, he says, voice soft. Why? James's gaze softens, hands ruffling Liam's hair. Just checking, he says, voice gentle. He can't tell him. Not yet. Tom pulls James aside, hands on his hips, eyes serious. That text, Tom says, gaze hard, hands gesturing. You think it's that Klein guy? James's eyes darken, fist clenching. No doubt, he says, voice low. He's hitting where it hurts. Tom's gaze firms, hands patting James's arm. You got this, he says, voice steady. James nods, gaze resolute. He has to. Back in Pittsburgh, Emily meets her security team, hands flipping a report, eyes focused. They've traced the text to a burner phone. No direct link to Klein, but his media contacts are suspect. Her hands slam the report down. Gaze fierce. He's slippery, but not invisible. She thinks of James, his fight for Liam. Her gaze softens, hands loosening. She's in this fight. 2. James spends the evening with Liam, hands helping with homework, eyes worn. Liam's eyes sparkle, hands writing fast. James watches, heart heavy. Klein's threat looms. But Liam's here, safe. He tucks Liam in, hands brushing his hair, gaze gentle. Night. Dad, Liam says, voice soft, eyes closing. James's eyes linger, voice soft. Night, buddy, he says, his world. At the trailer, James checks his phone, hands scrolling emails, eyes tense. Emily's team sent an update. Klein's linked to the blog that smeared him, paying for anonymous tips. His gaze hardens, hands clenching. It's a start, but not enough. He thinks of Emily, her strength. His gaze softens, heart stirring. She's fighting with him. He types a reply, hands firm. Keep digging. I'm not backing down. He hits send, eyes on the night. This is war. The next day, James is back in the lab, hands refining the battery system, eyes on the blueprint. Sarah's hands sync data, eyes warm, a silent nod of respect. The team's tight, the demo looming, and James's fix has them ahead. Ellison's hands gesture, eyes proud. You've turned this around. Harper, he says, voice strong, eyes on James. James's gaze glows, hands steady. He's earning his place. But Klein's threat festers, eyes darkening, hands pausing. He checks his phone. No new texts. But the fear lingers. Liam's at school. Tom's watching. But James's heart races. Fist clenching, he needs to end this. Emily stops by, hands holding a tablet, eyes concerned. We're close. she says, voice low, eyes meeting his. Found a paper trail. Klein's careless. James's gaze steadies. Hands nodding, they're gaining ground. That night, James and Emily meet in her office, hands sharing a file, eyes locked. The evidence mounts Klein's payments to bloggers, encrypted emails to media. It's damning, but not airtight. Emily's hands slam the file shut, eyes blazing. He's not invincible, she says, voice strong, eyes on James. James's gaze nods, hands gripping the chair. For Liam, he says, voice low, eyes fierce. Emily's gaze softens, hands reaching, stopping short. They're closer than ever. James drives home, hands steady, eyes on the stars. Willow Creek's fields glow under moonlight. A quiet promise. He thinks of Liam, his sketches, his dreams. He thinks of Emily, her strength. His heart stirs. Gaze alive, kindness brought him here, and he'll fight to keep it. But Klein's shadow looms. Fist clenching, the battle's not over. Pittsburgh's skyline sparkles under a crisp June morning, glass towers catching the sun's first rays. James Harper sits in a quiet office at Watson Innovations, flipping through a thick file. His focus locked on the emails and bank records. His jaw tightens as he holds the pages firmly. This is it. The proof to Barry Klein. Emily Watson sits across, typing furiously on a laptop, her attention fixed on the screen. She pauses, lifting her gaze to James, a determined nod passing between them. They've traced Klein's burner phone, linked his payments to bloggers, and uncovered encrypted emails ordering the smear campaign against James. James steadies himself, his resolve fierce. Klein's going down. Emily closes the laptop with a decisive snap, her expression blazing. We're ready, she says, voice firm. Meeting James's steady gaze. Press conference tomorrow. We expose him. End this. James nods, his posture tense, his determination clear. For Liam, he says, voice low, his purpose unwavering. Emily's expression softens, her hand reaching across the desk, stopping short. For all of us, she says, voice warm, her resolve steady. James's chest lifts, his determination warming. They're a team, stronger than Klein's schemes. That night, James drives back to Willow Creek, his grip firm on the wheel, his thoughts on the road ahead. The fields glow under twilight, a quiet promise of home. At the garage, Tom Reed greets him, tossing a wrench with a gruff smile. You look like you're going to war, Tom says, his tone serious. James's expression hardens. Klein's targeting Liam, he says, voice low. Tomorrow, we finish it. Tom's surprise flashes briefly, his hand clapping James's shoulder. You got this, he says, voice steady, his support solid. James nods, his tension easing slightly. Tom's always had his back. Liam's at the trailer, sketching a hawk on a pad, his face bright with focus. James kneels beside him, squeezing his shoulder gently. Hey, buddy, he says, voice soft, his attention fully on Liam. Liam's face lights up, showing the sketch with pride. For when I get my camera, he says, voice bright. James's heart aches with love. He'll make that dream real. He pulls Liam close, hugging him tightly, his protectiveness fierce. You're safe, right? He asks, voice low, his concern clear. Liam nods, clutching the pad, his expression puzzled. Yeah, Dad, he says, voice soft. James's tension softens. Ruffling Liam's hair, he won't let Klein near his son. Back in Pittsburgh, The press conference looms. James stands backstage, adjusting a microphone, his focus on the buzzing crowd. Reporters chatter. Cameras flash. The air thick with tension. Emily stands beside him, gripping the podium, her attention on her notes. Her posture stiffens, her gaze lifting to James, a silent vow in her expression. "We do this together," she says, voice low, her resolve firm. James nods, his determination steady. "Let's end it," he says, voice strong, his focus locked on her. The stage lights blaze, and Emily steps forward, addressing the crowd. "Watson, Innovations stands for integrity," she says, voice clear, gesturing to a screen. "But one man has tried to tear us down." The screen lights up, displaying emails and bank records exposing Klein's payments, his burner phone texts, his lies about James. Reporters gasp, scribbling furiously, their attention riveted. James steps up, his stance confident. "I'm just a mechanic," he says, voice strong, his focus on the crowd. "But I won't let lies hurt my son or this company." Klein's in the front row, his expression darkening, fingers tapping furiously. "But the evidence is airtight." Emily's voice cuts through, sharp and unwavering. "Richard Klein's actions are under investigation," she says, her focus locked on him. "Justice will be served." Klein stands, waving dismissively, his frustration boiling over. But security steps in, guiding him out. The crowd erupts, reporters shouting, cameras flashing. James's tension eases, his stance relaxing. It's over. That evening, news breaks. Klein's assets are frozen, his media empire crumbling under scrutiny. James sits in his trailer, scrolling through headlines on his phone, his relief palpable. Emily calls, her voice soft through the speaker. "We did it," she says, her tone warm. James nods, setting the phone down, his gratitude clear. "Couldn't have without you," he says, voice warm, their connection undeniable. Emily's tone shifts, her affection subtle, something unspoken binds them. With Klein gone, James turns to the $500,000, opening his bank app, his thoughts on the balance. It's been a wait, a gift he didn't ask for, but now it's a chance. He meets Tom at the garage, passing a notebook, his intention clear. "I want to start a fund," James says, voice firm, his purpose resolute. "For Willow Creek, school, families, people like Mrs. Larson." Tom flips through the notebook, his surprise evident. "You're giving it all away?" he asks, voice stunned. James nods, his resolve steady. "Kindness got me here," he says, voice soft. Time to pass it on. They plan the Willow Creek Community Fund, drafting proposals, their collaboration seamless. James visits Liam's school, shaking the principal's hand, his generosity evident as he hands over a check. The principal's gratitude spills over, her voice choked. "For books, computers," she says, her appreciation clear. James's expression softens. It's a start. He stops by Miss Sue Larson's trailer, knocking gently, his kindness evident. She opens the door, her smile warm. "James," she says, voice welcoming. He hands her an envelope, his gesture thoughtful. "For your rent, medical bills," he says, voice soft. Her gratitude wells up, her voice breaking. "You're an angel," she says, hugging him tightly. James's expression warms, returning the hug. "This is why." Back at Watson Innovations. The battery system demo seals the international contract. James stands in the lab, high-fiving Sarah, his pride shared with the cheering team. Mark Ellison claps his shoulder, his approval clear. "You made this happen, Harper," he says, voice strong. James's confidence glows. He's found his place. Emily joins them, her applause genuine, her connection with James evident. "You're not just a mechanic," she says, voice warm. "Your family." James's heart swells, their bond deepening. They share a quiet moment, their closeness palpable, a tie forged in fire. James brings Liam to Pittsburgh, presenting a wrapped box, his excitement mirrored in Liam's eager unwrapping. Liam's face lights up, revealing a camera, his dream realized. He hugs James tightly, his joy uncontainable. "Thanks, Dad," he says, voice bright. Emily joins them, resting a hand on Liam's shoulder, her warmth maternal. "Show me those hawks," she says, voice playful. Liam's enthusiasm shines as he snaps a test shot. She's more than a boss now. They spend the day together, exploring a park, Liam pointing his camera at birds, Emily kneeling beside him, their shared joy evident. James watches, his contentment clear. They're a family, not just in name. His heart swells. Anna would be proud. Willow Creek hosts a celebration for the community fund. The park alive with activity. Banners fluttering in the breeze. Families gather. Kids running. The atmosphere vibrant. James stands on a small stage, addressing the crowd. "This fund's for us," he says, voice strong, his pride evident. "For our kids, our homes, our future. Kindness built it." The crowd cheers, their appreciation resounding. Tom waves, his support unwavering. Larson's tears of joy speak volumes. Liam stands beside James, proudly showing his camera, his creativity flourishing. Emily joins them, her presence a steady support, her connection with James undeniable. "You changed this town," she says, voice soft, her admiration clear. James's expression softens, his gratitude mutual. "We did," he says, voice warm. Liam's voice is quiet, his tribute heartfelt. "For Mom," he says, his love for Anna eternal. James's emotion wells, his bond with his son unbreakable. For Anna, always. The night ends with music. The community united under the stars. James, Emily, and Liam sit together, their bond a quiet strength. The fund's first projects are underway. New books for the school, repairs for the garage, help for families. James's heart is full. One act of kindness, fixing a Mustang, led here. Months later, Klein's trial begins, his downfall complete. James watches from the trailer, his peace restored. Liam's at school, pursuing his passion for photography. Emily's at the company, leading with vision. James heads to the garage, his work fulfilling. Life's good. He thinks back to that rainy day, under a Mustang's hood, helping a stranger who changed everything. Emily's gift wasn't just money, it was trust, a chance to rise. His heart stirs, kindness is a spark, and they fanned it into a flame. He looks at Liam's photos on the wall, a hawk in flight, his pride evident, his son's dreams are soaring. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for joining us on this journey through these beautiful stories. Your support is the driving force that keeps these tales of kindness spreading far and wide. Please hit like to keep the flame of kindness burning. Leave a comment sharing a kind moment you've experienced. And don't hesitate to spread the inspiration. See you again with many more heartwarming stories.